She said, I thought you don't go this morning. She said, I thought you don't go in the bad weather. I said, I have to go. That's it. I'm done. I have to go.
No, I think what you should use as a barometer. You could say, would you go to the office in this weather? If you go to the office in this weather, then you go to shul. How do you like that? And not only, and I presume different times of a person's life, you know, sometimes they go more to office than less to the office. But you should not look at the office when you at a time in your life. You should look at the period of
I
life.
wouldn't go anyway to the office today, so I'll stay
You
home.
would, or you
I
wouldn't.
say that.
Right, you wouldn't.
No.
I'm talking about a time of your life that you felt you would have to go to the office. You get what I'm saying? When you're 21, you know what I mean? No one's letting this weather get in their way. Okay, good morning. We are on 11A. Very interesting Gemaras, always beautiful Gemaras. The last thing we were talking about was the idea of not building a house higher than a shul. That the shul building should be the largest building in the city. That would be the most honorable, that's honorable for the city, that the shul is higher than the other buildings. There's a lot of discussion exactly what is the reason for that. So some want to say, because imagine if you're just standing on top of the roof of a shul, and you're standing on top of the roof of a house, if there's a flat roof, and you're using the flat roofs of the house, it's not respectful that the flat roof of the house is higher up, right? Higher is usually represents more majestic. So some want to say in communities that you don't have flat roofs, that you have slanted roofs, so nobody's working on those, no one's using the roof as a place of use, so there would not be a problem to have buildings that are higher, houses that are higher than a synagogue. The Chafetz Chaim brings down that I think because today many communities, there's churches in communities, so already there's things that are higher than the synagogue. So therefore, maybe it's not that. Maybe people rely on that. Maybe if you want, I could take out that halacha. Let me get out the Mishnah Berurah. Today, when you're building your home, if you're in a small community, you're in a small area, totally Jewish community, not to build the house higher than. Now, the discussion is, let's say if you have a situation in Israel and Israel, when there's a housing issue and space issue, so maybe to populate the land of Israel, that might be a reason to allow it. But you're doing it for some other reason. Let's see in the Shulchan Aruch, it's in Siman Kuf Nun. I mean, Rabbi Yosef has a whole discussion about this, but let's take a look over here. It says the following: Siman Kuf Nun says in the Shulchan Aruch, says you do not build a synagogue. You build it, number one, in the highest point of the city. The city, you have the low part of the city. You want the city to be on the high part of the city. It's always looking up. You look up to it's higher than other places. And not only you put it in the high part of the city, if you have a hill in the city, build it on top of the hill. That's honorable for the shul. And also you raise the shul, the Shulchan Aruch says, that should be higher than all the houses of the city that people use, excluding towers that are made just for beautification purposes, and people are not on top of the roof of these towers. That would not be a problem. If you have things that people don't use, that would not be a problem. If you right, he said, let's say if you have a roof that's slanted and not fit for use. So if no one's using the roof, So according to Shulchan Aruch, it would seem the issue is if you're using the roof and you're standing on the roof of the house higher than the roof of the shul. But when you're not using the roof, it would not be, it sounds like it would not be a problem. Now, but then then the Shulchan Aruch says that if you have a roof, if then he says, but if you, I'm sorry, I want to correct myself. It says if you have a roof that's slanted and people cannot use that roof, but people are using, let's say you have a second floor. So if you have a second floor of the house, so if people are in the second floor of the house and they're higher than that, and that second floor of the house is higher than the shul, that would be a problem. So you would not, you would look at how high the people in the second floor are. So if you're sitting in the second floor, right, you have a two-floor home, and if you're sitting in the second floor is higher than the shul roof, so then that's not respectful. So that would be um, a problem. Now, okay, we have to look up this halacha a little more. But that, and the Mishnah Berurah says, good morning, Adam. The Mishnah Berurah says, so he says, if you have a building that's made just for beautification purposes, people don't use the building at all, people don't live there, a fort, a tower or something, so that's not a problem if that tower is higher than the shul, and that's he says there are places that are not careful in this. He says, and there are places that when they're building a house, the house is higher than the synagogue, and he says that Achronim right because since there are many churches that are higher than the synagogue, so anyways you don't see that the synagogue is higher than everything else, right? Because there's the churches that are higher than than other places that are higher than the synagogue. But nevertheless, he says it's better to be careful in as much as you can, because the Gemara was very strict about this concept of not building a house higher than a synagogue. So again, we have to look into the halacha a little more exactly about the rules of this halacha. But this is something that there might be some leniencies under certain circumstances, but we have to has to be researched better. And here comes our Gemara that we're going to start our Gemara today on Yud Aleph Amud Aleph on 11a. 11a says the following. 11a1. And in the art scroll, it's on the first column. Amar Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi says, you have it? Ano Avda, the Rav Ashi says, so again, just to clarify, so the Shulchan Aruch, there are those that would just rely on the fact that if the roof is slanty and you're not standing on top of the roof, that's good enough. So if you have a house that's higher than the synagogue, as long as you're not standing on top of the roof, if it's slanty, so then it's not considered disrespectful for the synagogue if the house is higher than the synagogue.
Why?
Because if it's slanty, meaning therefore you can't stand on the roof, and therefore it's not considered a problem. But the Shulchan Aruch sounds like it would be a problem, even if you wouldn't stand on top of the roof. But if you're standing in the second floor, and therefore you're higher than you're using this, because that's what he says. You would look at how high that second floor is, that you're using, and if you're using that second floor, that's higher than the synagogue, that will be an issue. Okay, getting back to 11a1. Amar Ravashi. Ravashi says, Ana avdi lamata machasya. I helped the city of Machasya, I made sure the Locharva. I made sure that the city of Machasya will not be destroyed. Now, how did he make sure that the city of the Machasya is not destroyed? Because he made sure that the synagogues would be higher than the houses. He made sure that, rules of the town, um, rules of the rules of the town is you can't make warning us out. You can't build uh, a house higher than a what? Higher than a synagogue. So because it says the Gemara said earlier that any city that roof is higher than the synagogue is going to be destroyed because and you don't have respect for the synagogue. It's a lack of respect, and they bring a pasuk that says that by having the Beit Hamikdash higher, that created that it would not be destroyed. So based on that idea, if 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 your houses are higher than the synagogue, that will cause a destruction for this town. So if I make sure that the houses are not higher than the synagogue, so therefore that ensures the safety of the town. So then the Gemara says, but what do you mean? V'charva, the city of Machasya actually was destroyed. So what do you mean to say I made sure that the city won't be destroyed? But we see it was destroyed. So the Gemara says, no, I made sure that it won't be destroyed as a result of this. It got destroyed for a different sin. It didn't get destroyed because of that sin. It got destroyed from a different sin. Meaning, what's going to destroy a city? It's the sins that destroy the city that Hashem allows. When people do the right thing, the sins will not destroy a city, right? There's no sins to destroy the city. Like we had about the Gemara earlier by the city of Sodom, right? When it reached the level of, God bless you, of sin, when the sins would reach the top, it filled up with sin. At a certain point, the city is deserving of being destroyed. But there are certain sins that stick out that could destroy the city by itself. And I made sure that this will not happen. So now the Gemara continues. He says, Tachas Yishmael. Another thing that he said the people should be aware of, it's Tachas Yishmael. In front, better to serve, to work for an Arab, v'lo tachat nochri, better than working for a Roman. The Romans were at that time more wicked than the way the Arabs were. And because they were more wicked, so I presume that he's teaching you a very important lesson. If you have to work for somebody, good morning, Emmanuel, and you're not able to work for a fellow Jew, so he says if you have a choice between the Ishmael and the Edom, the Roman, go for the better work for the Ishmael, for the Arab, better than the Roman in those times.
They say Edomite?
Edomite, that's Esav, that's from Rome, people from Rome. Many people will call the Christians, they're the descendants from Edom, from Esav. But again, in their time period, now remember, the Romans were the ones who destroyed the Beit HaMikdash. They were the ones they were the ones who destroyed the temple.
When they say Ishmaelite at this time, they're not referring to Islamic people.
No, they're talking about, it's before Muhammad. This is before Muhammad. This is right. This is before Muhammad. It's talking about the Middle Eastern countries, or Middle Eastern, those areas of the Arabs, and better to, in those days, it was better to work for the Arab than to work for,
And the person saying this is in Eretz Israel or in Babylon?
Rav B'Machas Amar Rav. I would think he's in Babylon. I would think he's in Babylon. Because Rav and Shmuel should be in Babylon.
This is Tachat Yishmael, I don't need a lot of it.
But that's if it's between a Yishmael and Edom. But if you have between a Yishmael and a Nachri, so Tachat Nachri, again, so what were you saying, David? Good morning, Ariel. Shalom Aleichem. Nachri is the Roman, yes. So if it's a question between the Arab and the Roman in those days, it was better to work for the Arab. But if it's a question of the Roman and someone and a person from certain Persian part of the country, Rashi here says it's a citizen from, connected from the Persians coming. If you have a question of working for someone from the Persian country or someone from Rome, better to work. Ariel, we are on 11A1. So he says better to work for the Nachri v'lo tachat Chabor, and not under the Chabor, not under the guy who came from Persia. Rashi is people that they originated from the Persians. Other places Rashi says they lived near the Persians. So these are either they lived near the Persians or they came from the Persians. They originally, where did the English come from? America, we originally came from the English, right? We originated from the England, correct? So this sounds like a nation. In one place Rashi says it's the nation that originated, they came from, they came from the Persians. So they were even worse than the Edom, than the Romans. So it's better if you have to work, better work for an Edom guy if you have a choice over than Lo Tachat Chabar, instead of from this guy from the Persians. But Tachat Chabor v'lo Tachat Talmid Chacham. Now this is a fascinating idea. Now he says if you work for a Talmid Chacham, let's say you have a job to do. I have a job to do for a Torah scholar, or a job to do for a guy from this Persian place, which is so far the worst of the worst, right? Because they say they're worse than the Romans, and the Romans were worse than the Arabs. But he wants to point out that you have to be extremely careful not to get the Torah scholar upset. But if you're serving him and you're working for him, and if you do something that you don't act properly, you don't give the proper respect, and if he gets upset at you, so him getting upset at you could cause you to get punished. You could get punished for, let's say there's a job to do. I need you to do A, B, C, and D. The Torah scholar needs him to do A, B, C, and D. And this other guy from Persia needs you to do A, B, C, and D.
Can't offend.
Right, because if you offend the Persian guy, you offended him. Okay, but it's not as mean. You shouldn't have offended anybody. But if you offend the Torah scholar and he gets upset at you, and you hurt him because you didn't treat him, you didn't do what you needed to do, and if he gets upset at you, his getting upset could cause you harm, because you cause the Torah scholar distress. Right, that's what Ariel is saying, because if you're going to, meaning you have to make sure you don't become like buddy. Meaning, what does that mean say? There's a mitzvah in the Torah to connect to it. Good morning, Emmanuel. I'll give you a proper good morning. There's a mitzvah in the Torah one of the 630 mitzvahs is to attach yourself to a Torah scholar, to eat with them, to drink with them, to do business with them. If you know a Torah scholar, you have an idea. You go into a business. Better if you can help them with business, connect with them, do business with them, sit with them at a table, because they will. I don't think they're going to talk too much about who won the Super Bowl on Sunday. What's the Torah scholar going to talk about? To talk about Torah, proper brachot on the food. We'll talk about things of great meaning, of growth of life, of shalom, of peace. What is it? What is the Torah scholar going to talk about? You're going to learn from the Torah scholar. So there's a special mitzvah when you go to a wedding, you go to a place, you have an opportunity to sit next to the Torah scholar to get a ride. I get a ride with you or someone else. I want to get a ride with the Torah scholar. If I get a ride, be connected with him. But what Ariel is talking about, you have to be very careful. You want to be connected, but you shouldn't become that level of buddy to the sense that you don't have that respect. But sometimes when you connect with someone, you treat him like he's an equal colleague, and you don't have that real respect. And there's a special mitzvah to also have certain respect for the Torah scholar, a certain respect and a certain reverence for the Torah scholar, and therefore sometimes you'll act Moreh Maris. Sometimes you'll act with the Torah scholar. Maybe you won't give him. Maybe you won't treat him properly. And maybe he'll be sensitive. And if he's sensitive, that's a problem because if he's stressed out, if he feels stressed as a result of you, so that could cause a problem to you. So therefore, I think the lesson from here is that as much as we have to know that you have to know there's a big mitzvah to connect with a Torah scholar, but at the same time, when you're dealing with a Torah scholar, go out of your way to be careful not to hurt his feelings. When you have like a rabbi of a shul, a rabbi of a synagogue, so sometimes people are not careful enough and they say things and they do things, they talk about the rabbi sometimes the way they shouldn't, and that could and it gets back to the rabbi, and the rabbi feels stressed out, feels very bad when people are talking about him, negatively, and that could cause big problems for the people because the rabbi is upset. Yes.
You might be in a position that we're always too close to them. Sometimes you might upset them by something, and then they could have a negative thought out of not anger, but they could spell something negative, and since their mouth is very strong.
But that's just Gemara, exactly what you said. But I would say we have to know. Let's try to clarify this a little bit. I would say it's best to be as close as you can to a Torah scholar, Ariel. But here the Gemara is talking about when you're working for him, perhaps. When you're working for him and you might not do the job the way you should, so maybe that's more of the concern of the Gemara, right? We're talking about when you're working for someone, you're serving somebody. And sometimes you don't meet the needs of the person that you're working for because there's certain expectations that the boss has for the employee, and maybe maybe in your interactions with him you might not also interact properly because as an employee to a boss. But it could be if you're not working for the person, you're not working for the Torah scholar, you want to be close to Baba Sali, right? You're not working for him. You want to learn from him. You want to grow from him. So I would say, generally there shouldn't be a concern. Why would the Torah scholar get angry with you? What are you doing that should get him upset? You hear what I'm saying, Ariel? So yes, you have to still be aware not to treat him, not to just because I'm so close to him, I'm gonna treat him not with the proper respect, right? But I think it's less of a concern of that. The more Yeshua ben Nun, it says Yeshua never left Moshe, pretty much, right? He was always there. He's always by Moshe. He says, Yeshua lo mosh mitoch ohel. Here it says we're talking about work under Yeshua. We're talking about working for them. We know as an employee, many times employees do things that the employer is not satisfied with, and they can get upset. And then the Gemara, that's how I would say, Ariel. You hear what I'm saying? Then it says, Tachat Talmud Chacham, but then if you have a question of doing work for a Torah scholar, but doing work for a widow or an orphan, the Gemara says you got to be more careful. You got to watch out from the widow or the orphan, because if you work for them And if you don't meet what they want and you don't treat them, you don't do what's proper to them, and if they get upset, they feel bad that you're not putting in the job, you're not doing the work, and they lost money as a result of that. Now you angered, you hurt the orphan, you hurt the widow. When a widow or an orphan gets upset, if they cry, that's very powerful against the person who they cry about. So if you don't treat an orphan, it's one thing you work for somebody and you don't do the job right, bad enough, you didn't do the job right for a person. But if you didn't do the job right for an orphan or a widow, it's very dangerous for you, for your health, because the Torah is very particular. God takes up very strongly the pain, the tears of the widow and the orphan. And because they cry very often, and their cries are very powerful. You should know that we're now getting close to Pesach. They're already baking matzot, by the way. And there's a famous story of Yisrael Salanta. He said the following, who are the ones that work in the bakeries now? The bakeries, they're only in operation, the matzah bakeries, only a certain amount of months a year. They didn't start baking last Pesach, right? Maybe they started around Hanukkah time. Certain places they start Hanukkah time, obviously the bigger bakeries and the smaller bakeries. Back in Europe, let's say I would guess a couple of months before Pesach, the bakeries would be open. And a lot of the times, who would they hire to work in the bakery? Widows. Widows they needed extra money, and they would come and they would be the ones working on the dough in the bakery. And then there was and it was common, and people want to be very careful that you have to, when you work, as long as you work the dough, it won't become chametz. But if you stop in the middle or certain things, if you're not on top of your game, there's concerns that it should not become chametz. So you had in the bakeries, sometimes the people that were supervising the the workers, sometimes they were very strong with the workers. Excuse me, they would yell at them. Stronger, more, faster. What are you doing? You're not doing enough job. And Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, one of the great rabbis of the Musa movement, he observed this and he was very upset. He said to one of the managers, he says, listen, I want to tell you, if you wouldn't scream at her, I'm telling you, most probably the matzah will still be good. It won't become chametz. But you want to be extra strict at the expense of hurting a widow. How do you like that story, David? You want to be meaning it's an extra stringency. Whatever you're telling them to do, it's an extra stringency. But whatever they're doing without you saying anything to them, it'll be kosher. You want to be extra strict at the expense of a violation of the Torah of verbally abusing the widow. You can't verbally abuse anybody. And therefore that story I heard many years ago, made a very big impression on me. How people have to sometimes you want to be strict in something, but when it's a strictness, and maybe it's that the matzah not being right. But and Rabbi Shlomo says, I'll guarantee it'll still be kosher. It's not like you're doing something that the widow is doing something that's really going to make it not kosher. It'll still be kosher. But what are you doing? You're screaming at her, and you're violating the Torah. Morris, interesting story. People have to know now what when to say, when not to say. Okay, now we have another statement. Any sickness is better than having stomach sickness. He says, we're talking about a sickness that causes pain, that weakens the person. There's different type of sicknesses that weaken a person, but he says, the sickness of stomach problems is really the worst of the sickness. So what is he really? Good morning, Gary. So what is the point maybe that he's saying? Perhaps he's saying, if a person, a person has to realize, appreciate, maybe if he has a certain type of sickness, but he has to realize there's other sicknesses that are worse, and he should just try to accept the sickness that he has, hopefully in the best way. Kol ke'ev v'lo ke'ev lev. Any pain, but the pain of the heart is the worst type of pain. And he says, kol mechush, any type of, sometimes you have like some sort of something bothering you, feeling so great, an ache, but v'lo michash rosh, but not having a headache is from the worst type of things. And kol ra'ah, if it's a question of something bad happening to a person, one of the worst things is having a bad woman, lo isha ra, having a bad wife. And therefore, a person obviously should pray and be careful, pray to Hashem not to have a bad wife, and also be extra careful in choosing a woman. When you look for a woman, as much as it's important to look for a woman that comes from a good family, but you should make sure also what is her midot, what is her character. Because if you have if you fall in with a person falls in with I want to marry a woman who comes from such a prestigious family, but if if her character is not where it needs to be, you have to realize it's going to cause the person a life. Good morning. It's going to cause the person a life of anguish. Right. So he's telling different statements of life. He's telling different things that people should protect themselves from, most probably. Meaning, protect yourself from that headache. You have to realize he's telling you protect yourself from that woman. Maybe that's another idea. Why is he telling us? Why is it necessary to know that any bad but a bad woman? Why is it better to know anything bad than any type of any sickness, but not stomach sickness? Maybe the idea. Why are you telling us that? Maybe some of the people are not careful about their stomach, and they do things that could endanger their having stomach problems. So good morning. Maybe that's the point of him telling you. You know what? Watch your stomach. Be careful that you shouldn't do something that could endanger your stomach. When you have a question of a certain food that might really cause problems to you, stay away from it. Maybe he's giving you that advice, trying to shield you and help you. Because remember, it's very important, a person being healthy, the Rambam Maimonides says that health is part of Judaism, so to speak. It's a Jewish thing, it's part of religion. Being healthy is going to go ahead and be able to, the way you could serve God, being healthy, it's much easier to do everything right. You have much more opportunity in life when you're healthy than when you're not healthy. Person who's not healthy and not able to come to learn the Holy Torah, like Ronnie's coming to do, right? If a person is not chas v'shalom, not healthy, then they're not be able to be in the game the way they could be in the game, right? They don't show up for vineyard, they don't show up for learning, and it's more challenging to say the right thing, to do the right thing. So maybe that's perhaps the idea, the importance of knowing, to be careful from these type of things. Now, the Meiri, one of the Rishonim says the following. I want to read to you what he says. Even though when you marry a woman, you should look into, what her background is, what her family is, her lineage, very important, where someone comes from, right? Contrary to the modern, the world out there, they don't think about, they don't look into the family. No, we're supposed to look into the family. We know the great impressions and influence her family has on the woman, but nevertheless, more than looking into the family, which is important, it's looking into the girl's character, her midot, and the way she carries herself, because a bad woman causes pain to the heart of her husband. His whole life will be pained, and that's really that's how bad having a bad woman is. So therefore, you got to be careful, and maybe also, some people they fall in. They're looking for the looks. They're looking for the beauty, the physical beauty, and then they don't pay attention to but she might be a bad woman. She might be beautiful physically, But if she's a bad woman, it's gonna make your life miserable. So therefore, maybe that's his advice to everybody. And now he says another very interesting statement, to a political statement that he's saying right now, what David was talking about earlier today. He says Im yu kolayamim dio. If all the seas, all the oceans would be ink, va'agamim, and all the reeds that, you have reeds that you make the pens, for the writing. And if all the agamim were kumosim, would be quills they would be filled with quills. Imagine if all these ponds that grow and that they have all these reeds. Imagine you have thousands of reeds, so to speak, in these ponds, in this Vishamayim Yiriot. And if the heavens would be the parchment for the writing, so you have all these quills, all these writing pens. The whole bnei adam lavlarim, and everybody would be the scribe. So everybody, you have the whole world of the scribes. We have thousands of people that are scribes writing. Ein maspikim lichtov chalolo shel reshut. They will not be able to write what goes on in the heart of the king. The depth, there's so much going on, there's so much to write about, there's so much involved when a king makes a decision. Because a king, so one shot is a king has to worry, there's so much on the mind of the king. He has to worry about the taxes of the country, how to deal with the wars of the country, to judge the country. There's so much going on. You think about it in Israel today, right? Right? The prime minister has to be thinking about the war in different places of the country, different fronts of the country, right? Emmanuel, the prime minister has to think about that. Good morning. He has to think about what's happening on the financially, what's happening with the economy in the country. You can't, as a king, right, Sonny? You have to think about a lot of things. You have to think about the finances, the military, the health of the country. There's so much going on, and you got to be thinking about it all at one time. You can't just focus on the war and let the economy go. Everybody go wherever, have nothing left. So, therefore, you have to realize that. And what is the point of telling us this? Why is the point of telling us how much goes on in the mind of a king or in the mind of, let's say, President Trump? He says because a person should pray, because we know a person needs to pray that everything should be good in the country. And sometimes you see things that don't look right. You see that the government, the king or the prime minister is doing something that doesn't look so right, but you have to realize, you should realize that there's so much going on that he makes that move. You don't know what's really going on, what's the depth of the move, because he has so much that he has to be weighing on his decision. So it's not, you might look at it on the surface, but there's so much going on in that decision. God bless you. And the Ran says, and he says, and really you have to realize also how much Hashem is helping. There's so much that needs to go on in the king. You have to realize the Sfas Emes says a government needs so much thought, so much depth, and really, naturally, the minister, the prime minister, the king, the president won't be able to do everything. However, it's Hashem's help that really makes the difference, that they're able to go ahead, gives them the ability to run the country in a proper fashion. I want to wish everyone a beautiful day, beautiful davening. Thank you all for being here. We have a beautiful crowd. Thank you. We thank everybody. Hopefully we'll have more of this crowd in the future. Have a great day. Thank you.